Deja Mort. Already seen, already dead. But you know what hasn't already been seen? A boss tier list for community MvM. Yep, you heard me right. Means vs Machines Repealed is an ongoing community MvM event featuring a little mission called Deja Mort. It is a unique boss rush style mission featuring many mini bosses and bosses from community operations seen prior, as well as a couple of new and unique ones. For this video, I have went and gone through this mission many times for the sake of gathering footage of every single boss. Then I'll analyze which ones were my favorite, others my least favorite, and then put them all on the tier list. Now for the criteria, I will be looking at the bosses and their overall flashiness. Stuff like unique attacks, special abilities, anything that makes them stand out among the roster. And even though difficulty wasn't the main focus of this boss rush, I will still be accounting for it, as well as the placements for each and every single boss. At the end of the day, what I am looking for is how fun it is to fight them, as well as how much aura they have while doing so. Anyway, it's time to start ranking these bosses. We'll be starting off with Wave 1, which puts us in the intermediate bracket and can roll up to 3 selections of mini-bosses. The Field General is a burst fire conch soldier, shooting as fast as a big rock but only 4 rockets at a time. The quick burst it shoots can potentially one-shot you, but the arena here does have plenty of cover to go around and is rather generous with the pickups like most. Not much else to really say about this fight, to be honest. The supports can take advantage of the conch boost, but they're pretty easy to dispatch with group damage. All in all, a relatively decent beginner fight to start with. I'll be putting Field General in C tier. Explosive Surprise is a burst fire demo that shoots explosive baseballs. Presentation wise, this is the best one out of the 3. It's introduced like a Kirby boss with his health bar filling up as well as the accompanying sound effects. Gameplay wise though, it is the easiest among the 3 featured this wave. It stands in the middle, making it an easy target, but its biggest flaw is unfortunately its unique ability. They use their giant baseball to rapidly shoot out explosive baseballs like a volcano. Once again, it is very well done in the way it's presented, but as you can see in the footage, the baseballs explode high in the air and doesn't hit any one of our teammates. Honestly, I'm not gonna rag too hard in this Krakatoa ability, as he's still a pretty cool fight to start our journey into the boss rush. An Explosive Surprise is gonna go into B tier. The Fallen Patrol Chiefs are the third and last mini bosses in row 4. Of the 3 beginner fights this wave, this is my least favorite one to start off on. It's the only fight where you have to battle 3 mini bosses simultaneously, which is asking for quite a lot. The demo isn't too bad if you know how to strafe through pipes, but the pyro can close in on you and is able to airblast a few projectiles, and the heavy can take advantage of the map's wide open space with their minigun. With not much investment into resistances, you really have to separate these chiefs away from each other, and combining with Demonite supports, this can be a struggle. Their death animations leading to explosions are pretty cool, but the battle overall is not a particularly fun one, and it is the second most difficult one in this intermediate bracket. The Fallen Patrol Chiefs belong in D tier. Now we're moving on to Wave 2, where the wave puts you through one gauntlet of mini bosses. The big-headed behemoth is a punchy that gets introduced Kirby style. This one is the easiest in this bracket. Its attacks are quite slow and it has the lowest health in this gauntlet, but it does charge up an attack if it lives long enough, moving fast to slowly unleash one powerful blow. If it hits anybody. This mini boss was definitely made for a laugh if it wasn't obvious enough, and it is further proven by the fact that it's shot in furthest whenever anybody dies to it. Their design is so comically bad that I unironically respect it. The big-headed behemoth is gonna go into B tier. The Ton 618 Black Hole Pyro is another mini boss with a Kirby style introduction. This flame pyro is able to channel an ability that sucks players into themselves. This one from my personal experience is really janky. Sometimes it won't work as intended and instead have you flying towards a wall, and it does become incredibly disorienting with all the camera shaking whenever it does this. While some of their abilities like a multi-fireball attack are fun to dodge, jank is one word to describe this boss. I'll be placing the Black Hole Pyro into C tier. King Burst and General Bomber are the last mini bosses in this bracket and are both fought simultaneously. Together they are the hardest mini bosses, but not in a particularly good sense. Besides the fact that they are duos, the damage they deal is so high to the point where they can one-shot without resistances, and supports start spawning a lot more frequently to overcrowd the arena. At least that's how it feels like anyway. Splitting them apart is a big ask, especially with how small this arena is, and for many of my playthroughs, these two can cause a lot of deaths for most players. As the last intermediate bosses, they do serve their purpose of closing the bracket, but all the things surrounding them does make the send-off rather unenjoyable. I'll be placing both King Burst and General Bomber down into D tier. Next up is Wave 3, where we start entering the advanced bracket. This wave only features one mini boss though. The Drunken Driver is a unique bumper car heavy that slowly attacks you by boosting their car to Mach speed. This is one of the more standout fights in the boss rush, most notably for its shitpost value and how the fight progresses, where the first one was intentionally set as a bait and switch, before having the other Drunken Driver spawn and swarm you alongside other supports. As far as this fight is, the only thing that really drags it down is how it forces one strategy to beat them. The Drunken Driver's attacks deal extremely high damage, and they have insane steering skills to where it's basically impossible to avoid their attacks, unless you're standing at a height advantage, so the fight basically boils down to the floor is lava. In all fairness, it's pretty much a gimmick fight, which can give it a point towards it standing out, and you can look at this as a teaching moment for the player that it is okay to use height advantage to cheese the bosses. Even on subsequent playthroughs though, I still enjoy this fight, and the shitpost value carries it quite a lot. I'll be placing the Drunken Driver into A tier. Moving on to Wave 4, which features 3 main bosses and 2 possible fights to roll for. The Mining Supervisor is featured in his own arena, who is a soldier that uses various weapons that are swapped out with each health threshold met. For the most part, this boss offers a fairly decent challenge and the weapon changes do keep things interesting. The only moments of frustrations comes with the quick transitions between weapons, where if you don't prepare for it, you can basically get 1-0 in an instant. But yeah, not much to say on them, being a fine boss overall, and it does have a unique death sequence at the end. The Mining Supervisor will be placed in C tier. Field Marshal Mechanist and Deadlock are both fought as soldier and sniper duos respectively. The cool thing about them is that they each can recall and swap to their second weapon at half health. Mechanist was a fairly decent boss overall, however Deadlock is both a bit of a joke and a real menace. The first phase has them standing still with their Machina while aiming towards you. Problem here is that they will never shoot their shot unless you stand still, which in 99% of cases doesn't really happen. Then when Deadlock swaps to their SMG on their second phase, they become extremely strong thanks to the mini crit boost and the lack of cover around the arena to hide from their burst damage. They become a high priority target as soon as they hit their second phase in the worst way possible. Mechanist will be placed into C tier, but as for Deadlock, they'll be placed down into D tier. Now we're moving on to Wave 5, where it features 3 mini-boss gauntlets. For the first gauntlet, we have the Prismatic Diffractor, the Immolator, and the Decimator. The Prismatic Diffractor is a burst fire laser soldier. This one shoots his lasers in rainbow colors for the most part, and there's not really much else because it's all they really do. They're extremely easy relative to the bosses prior, and the projectiles are also easy to dodge. This one's going down in D tier. The Immolator is a combo pyro using the backburner, flare gun, and axe extinguisher. This one's a fairly decent boss, but it was rather difficult to see them effectively combo their attacks due to their targeting priority, which in this boss rush, every single boss targets the closest player. At times, it will air blast with the backburner, but only when it's able to, and it can use the axe extinguisher, but they still suffer from the same problem as mentioned before. The Immolator is going to go down into C tier. The Decimator is a rapid fire banner soldier. Now this is among the coolest mini bosses in this wave. It has the unique ability of blowing its buff banner mid-fight, and doing so will not only boost itself and others with mini crits, but will also call in a bombardment that rains out rockets from the sky for a short duration. This is really cool to witness, and it's one thing that saves this gauntlet from being bad overall. I kind of wish the arena they're fought in is a bit smaller with less props to go around, so the ability would be more lethal. But other than that, it's a good mini boss design on its own. The Decimator belongs in B tier. Now for the second gauntlet comes Howitzer Machination, the Dragon King, and the Headless Man. The Howitzer Machination is a demo that uniquely shoots bombs out in the sky and that then rains down onto the player, much like a howitzer. It's really cool that the bomb shoots all around itself in a circle, but the attack is very much a hit or miss. It constantly switches back and forth between targeting players on the ground and just shooting upwards, so half the time it actually does damage, if any. The Howitzer Machination is gonna sit in D tier. The Dragon King is a Fury Pyro, and from what I've seen, it does pull out a flare gun to shoot out a meteor shower if enough time passes. And the time it takes is a very long while, so by the time it happens, it's nearly dead. Quite unfortunate because most of the time it is a typical Dragon Fury Pyro, and into C tier, the Dragon King goes. The Headless Man is a Demo Knight with a Kirby style introduction. This one's unique ability is decloaking for a short duration before uncloaking to shortly cast Fear in an AoE radius. Quite a nice shakeup that does save the gauntlet from being bad overall, which strangely I have 2 nickels at this point. Because it's a melee boss, the cluttered props around the arena does mean they're pretty easy to deal with and to avoid their abilities, but overall they're not a bad addition to this gauntlet. The Headless Man belongs in B tier. Finally, the third gauntlet of this wave has the otherworldly robots. The Elite Gunner and the Elite EMPer are both fought in the first round of this gauntlet. The Gunner is a shotgun heavy that periodically shoots out sickies, while the EMPer is a punchy. Although I think this one's AI forces them attack at range, so their hits just completely whiff. But the coolest thing about these two guys is that if you kill one of them, the other will empower up. The Gunner resorts to using a deflector and upgrades his cannon to fire a burst of homing rockets. Then the EMPer will start rapidly shooting Thompson lasers from its eyes. Very cool set of mini bosses, though the EMPer is definitely the weakest of the duo. The Elite Gunner is going to be in B tier, but for the EMPer, they're going to sit right in the middle of C tier. The next two are the Otherworldly Barrage and the Otherworldly Annihilator. The former is simply a barrage soldier using the Cow Mangler, while the latter is a sticky nuke demo, where the projectile has a massive blast radius foretold by the outer ring attached to it, but you can shoot it down to prevent the explosion, which is a nice way of countering them. There's no second phase that these two share, and for the most part these guys are rather plain, but as a duo though, they still make for an engaging fight. Both of these guys are going to sit in the middle of C tier. The next wave is split between 5 boss fights, with each one having only one main boss to fight. The Tridetonator is the first one to cover and is unfortunately one of the worst bosses to roll for this wave. I won't deny that this is a very cool looking boss, a soldier with half of its body riding inside the tank it's driving and slowly swinging his chainsaw around. The arena is small to the point where you're encouraged to run around rather than camp, which adds to the challenge that still remains fun. But my biggest problem with the boss is not with its insanely high damage on hit, but its tankiness, pun intended. It has both a 25% resistance to all ranged attacks and 50% resistance to crit damage. This makes them the tankiest boss of this bracket, and even when you know how to exploit its pathing, the fight will become tedious over time. I low-key like this boss, but they definitely could be a lot less spongy. The Tridetonator belongs in D tier. The Magician Lord is a skeleton boss, though of the less traditional kind. It's a melee boss that constantly summons skeletons, and it is spammed to the extreme here. It's one of the least enjoyable fights for me due to this fact alone. If you're a pyro or a soldier or even a shield medic, you're not going to worry too much about clearing them out, but yeah, the skeletons are incredibly obnoxious for not staying dead and have a lot of jank to them that makes it difficult to take precise shots. Magician Lord's going to be placed in D tier. The Time Disaster is a unique Sentry Buster boss and is easily the most standout fight in this wave. It spawns on top of a fountain, and the first thing it does is channel one of its abilities, being an extremely long but lethal map-wide detonation. In every one of my playthroughs, it always manages to catch someone that doesn't respect it, which is just hilarious. The boss also has a bunch of other unique and creative attacks, including homing grenades and shooting cannonballs around itself. The one I liked the least was the delayed bombs, just laying them to deny a large part of the arena for a long while, and you aren't able to defuse them at all. But all in all, it's a very fun fight. The only unfortunate thing is that you have a 1 in 5 chance to roll this boss, which is a shame to tuck a unique and creative boss behind such a low chance. The Time Disaster is going to be placed in A tier. Slave Knight Dale is a soldier boss. Besides the very obvious reference, the unique quality of this boss is that it shoots skulls as rockets, and occasionally swaps between a rocket launcher and katana. But the coolest part of this boss comes when it reaches half health, where they unleash an explosion that rains down skulls that slowly falls towards the ground. Then their skull rockets start having homing properties. Also, a very neat attention to detail is the fact that their icon on their health bar starts having glowing purple eyes. This is a pretty well made boss overall, but I do think this one is on the weaker side, especially on its first phase. Slave Knight Dale is going to be up in B tier. Direct Disaster is a soldier boss that uses a variety of rocket launchers, including one that shoots lasers. It's a relatively simple soldier, and to be honest, this one is just lame in comparison to the roster this wave. Not that simple bosses are bad, and difficulty wise they remain fine, but they definitely would be better off in a gauntlet with a couple other mini bosses, especially in the mid game of this boss rush. I'm putting Direct Disaster in C tier. Wave 7 has another selection of singular boss fights, but we have 4 of them this time. Major Bone Cremator is a pyro that switches between a flock that marks for death and a flare gun with barrage properties, and the switch happens when the shield medic paired alongside it dies. They are one of the more unique boss designs, as it's the only one to have a medic pairing, but the pyro is very much plain. And depending on your team comp, the flock does get swapped out very quickly, and you're left with a simple flare pyro that just barrages infinitely. But overall, the boss still remains serviceable. Major Bone Cremator is going into C tier. Distorted Messenger is a demo that slowly shoots out nukes. The most unique quality of this boss is that it is squatted with 2 tiny invincible shotgun engineers. The one called Left Hand shoots bullets, and the other called Right Hand blasts a barrage of rockets. This fight can be a mixed bag though, due to the Doppler arena. Both the left and right hands can fall off the platform quite frequently, which can throw you off and get shot from the flank. They can also do quite a lot of damage even with resistances, and the fight has the most amount of crit usage with the addition of Bat Scout supports, so you may have to refund for resistances in order to die less frequently. They're an interesting boss design for sure, but the challenge here is far steeper compared to the others this wave. Distorted Messenger belongs in C tier. Private Seeker is a homing barrage soldier. Its unique quality is shooting above itself to rain down rockets towards players, similar to the Howitzer Machination if it was done more consistently. Although, in saying that, the boss does stop firing if you approach them point blank, which hurts the enjoyment of the fight when it just stands there helplessly. Similar bosses can suffer from it, but this one especially does. If cheesing was left out of the equation, it's still an enjoyable fight, and the homing rockets encourages you to move around a lot, which is a good thing for boss fights in general. Private Seeker is going into B tier. Nemesis Program Mark 1 Shell is a single boss sporting 2 phases. The first is simply a Captain Punch, which is rather uninteresting as it has trouble walking around the cliffside arena, but the second phase is where the fight does get taken seriously, transforming into a laser soldier that does tremendous amounts of damage in a burst. I would say this is the second most challenging fight in this wave, but it's still somewhat enjoyable. If it wasn't for the first phase being a punching bag, I'd probably appreciate this boss a lot more. Mark 1 Shell is going down into C tier. Now we're on wave 8. We're still getting singular boss fights, but this is the point where the bosses start getting progressively complex in regards to the moveset. Chaos Surge is a pyro using a large arsenal of weapons, the likes of which include the usual, but they also use a rocket launcher and a flare gun barraging homing flares. But not only that, they do possess some fire-based abilities. Those include shredding its guitar to shoot fireballs in a 360, as well as taunting to cast fire from the ground in randomized locations. Pretty fun design all around. Only nitpicks worth pointing out is that I think the boss arena here makes the fight easier than it should. Plenty of elevation that lets you avoid most attacks. Then this boss has a unique death sequence where it just gamer rages and stomps the ground before exploding. Though this isn't really a criticism, it's more that it just looks funny. Regardless, I'm placing Chaos Surge in A tier. Colonel Conduit is an engineer boss. Their design is similar to Chaos Surge in that they have an arsenal of weapons to switch between, as well as a couple unique abilities. This time, they're electric based to go with the theme, and the abilities are casted much faster. The arena has a lot more space to move around in, so most attacks are still fairly easy to dodge, but once again, it's another well-made boss fight. I'm placing Colonel Conduit in A tier. Master Mechanic is another unique engineer boss. They use a variety of weapons, but they separate themselves apart from the other bosses here by utilizing combat tanks rather than abilities. These tanks get utilized one at a time, so it's kind of a three-phase boss. The first is a rocket tank, the second being a minigun tank, which from my own experience is the most threatening, and the third one is a railgun tank. This fight is definitely among the standouts in this boss rush, and you do get to see combat tanks utilized as a boss, which is strangely rare in community MvM. The one thing I will criticize is how the tanks are fought here. The tanks just stay in this wide open space where it's super easy to dodge around them. It's consistent with the difficulty the missions design around, but part of me thinks they could have done more with this. Like, the arena here is quite open enough for the tanks to patrol around, and there's even a gate here that's large enough for them to make a sick ass entrance. Still though, with what we got, it's still a very unique fight overall and a very nice showcase of combat tanks. The master mechanics being placed in A tier. And now we're on wave 9, which moves away from the singular fight structure, and instead features 2 mini-boss gauntlets. The first one features Bad to the Bone, Skull Magician, and 5 tank zombies. The Bad to the Bone is a motorcycle skeleton boss. Now if you happen to roll this gauntlet, you're in for some fun. They are an amazing palate cleanser for constantly playing the Bad to the Bone riff as a shitpost. Gameplay wise, they are basically Drunken Driver if they were a single boss and was balanced for real, and it still gets hard countered by just standing on the various objects around the arena. Not like it really matters too much, at the end of the day they were just made for a laugh, and it is very much welcome at this point in the boss rush. Bad to the Bone will be placed in S tier. The Skull Magician is a giant floating skull. For how funky it looks, it is unfortunately one of the most harmless mini-bosses. It only has this one attack where it shoots tornadoes, and the projectile does plenty of knockback but very low damage, and it seems to be the only source of damage, because when I was standing around the tornadoes when they landed, they didn't seem to do much of anything. So yeah, it's a joke boss and not in a particularly good way, and I'm placing Skull Magician into D tier. The tank zombie fight is unique in that you fight 5 of them at once. It is an absolutely absurd amount that the fight feels like a shitpost. Just the very idea of running away from 5 hulking behemoths is funny in and of itself. The fight still does have to be taken seriously, due to all the supports as well as the tanks being able to throw rocks, the likes of which stuns and has high projectile speed. It's a rather unique and entertaining fight overall. I'm placing these tanks in B tier. The second gauntlet features Dr. Dismemberment, the Man in Black, and Captain Cognac on the Ranch Arena. Dr. Dismemberment is a crossbow medic firing buzzsaws that bleeds players, and it does have one unique ability of channeling an AoE that stacks bleed damage. A very simple mini-boss that is actually the only one that is a medic, surprisingly. Not much else to say on this one besides being a decently designed boss. They're going into B tier. The Man in Black is a gun spy, and once again the only spy in this boss rush. It does have a cool ability of calling in the only spy supports in this mission, and another ability where they fly into the air and supercharge their revolver for a short duration. The only bad qualities comes to the short invulnerability per ability cast, which does become slightly annoying to wait them out. Plenty of the abilities also leave them wide open to attacks while they stand still. But overall though, it's a cool unique take on a mini-boss based on their respective class. The Man in Black belongs in B tier. Captain Cognac is a demo that initially rides on a cannon shooting out cannonballs before resorting to his loose cannon when their vehicle gets destroyed. For being the one to cap off this gauntlet, they are rather weak. While it is cool to see the detonation and its unique ability of casting a large explosion by taunting, the fight simply remains trivial and they don't even do that much damage. But regardless, they're a decent mini-boss at the end of the day, so we put in Captain Cognac in C tier. Now we're moving on to wave 10, which at this point we'll start seeing more complex bosses being featured and most of them being fought on their own. Soviet Tonka Weapons is a heavy boss, and let me just say how wicked sick this boss design is. They have the most unique introduction by having a camera locked cutscene and flashing their title card, with the tip at the bottom given at random. The boss fight is also unique in several ways. For one, they are melee centric, however they do swap between various weapons including some shotguns to a minigun to just straight up shooting lasers out of their eyes. But the coolest thing is that they have custom animations to perform certain melee based abilities. These include a leg stomp that creates explosions across a certain direction, the usual ground stomp attack, and a weird double punch attack. Tonka is also the only boss that heals mid-fight, poking in and out to heal at certain locations like a killing floor boss. It does this for a maximum of 3 times, but it is thankfully balanced by them taking increasing amounts of damage for every use. And if your team is good enough, you could finish the fight early. The fight is a rather lengthy one if you let them, but even still, it's a very engaging one. They serve as a sign to show what's to come in the later parts of the boss rush, and I'd say that their placement here is a solid choice. I'll be placing Tonka in S tier. Up next is Wave 11 featuring the Iron Star Genius. They are an engineer boss with 2 unique phases, starting in its UFO, which basically acts as a tank with laser cannons and has a whole bunch of abilities and attacks. And then when the UFO gets destroyed, it proceeds to phase 2 where you fight Iron Star themselves. They use a variety of weapons as well as a couple abilities that force you to move and jump around to avoid damage. And then it gets to this final bout where it uses the Wrangler to cast damaging zones around themselves. Once again, this boss is absolutely awesome. The lead up to the battle as well as the environment being all green and having the mothership overlooking the arena just adds so much to the fight on display. But there's a few points of criticisms I have. The fight against Iron Star is one of the longest in this boss rush, around 4 minutes give or take. And just for comparison, Tonka is about a minute or so less. Now being lengthy isn't too bad so long as the fight is an engaging one, which Iron Star is, but the fight is long for the wrong reasons. They are not only very healthy bosses, but their high mobility on both phases adds to the overall tedium of the fight. UFO from the first phase, as mentioned before, is considered as a tank, and we all know that Heavy does suffer a lot from dealing less damage to them. They did account for Spy and Sniper with the power core behind the UFO as an alternate way of backstabbing and headshotting respectively. The thing is, the tip given for this is extremely easy to miss due to the action going on, and it's only printed in the text chat, so if you're playing with someone who hasn't caught on to this, the first phase can go on longer than expected. Then the problem with Iron Star themselves mostly comes to their teleport ability. They move all around the arena 3 times before aiming their railgun, and then they do it the second time before resuming. The shockwaves also just deal relatively trivial damage, so it feels like this ability stalls more than it is lethal. Overall though, I still consider Iron Star to be one of the top tier bosses. They just suffer from a few tedious elements that makes the fight longer than it needs to be. I'll be placing the Iron Star into A tier. Wave 12 is where the expert bracket starts and has us fighting Major Shocks from Temu. They're a soldier boss with another varying moveset, using a couple of weapons, and has this one ground pound ability with a huge AoE that one-shots and creates damaging shields around it. But the fight stops a quarter of the way through and you get to the scripted sequence, where it becomes encased in a crystal rock and teleports out of the arena, ending the fight prematurely. As cool as this sequence is, part of me wishes the fight was drawn out a bit more. Obviously it was done to set up for a future battle at the end of the boss rush, but the sequence definitely could have been delayed a bit longer so we can appreciate the first battle a lot more. Then another criticism I have is that the sequence is too drawn out. Before they become frozen inside a rock, they stop firing and starts walking towards the middle to act passively. Once you realize that he's pretty much invincible, you kinda just sit there and watch it happen. Again, that's the whole point of the sequence, but how it was done could have been a lot better. If the sequence was happening while both us and Major Shocks were fighting each other, or maybe the first part of the sequence could have been transitioned faster, then it would definitely feel less awkward to watch it happen. I'll be placing Major Shocks from Temu in D tier. Moving on to Wave 13, where there's 2 bosses to fight in their respective arena, but considering that the mission shifts in wave number back to 12 after Major Shocks, I will refer to them as such. One of the 2 bosses you can fight here is Mercenary Matter, who is a completely unique boss. Its gameplay is a complete standout among the roster, basically a rip of Miracle Matter from the Kirby games. How this one works is that it takes full damage respective of the type it currently deals with its weapon, and any other form of damage gets significantly reduced. One single ability it has is that at a certain point, it transforms into a pyro to unleash a bombardment of fireballs. It's pretty well done. The only criticism worth pointing out is that it's kind of a team composition check, encouraging you to have all 3 damage types covered. And unfortunately, Spy does get cucked here because Mercenary Matter doesn't use melee weapons. The fight can also be slightly unfair at times simply due to the RNG nature of switching forms, and I can definitely recall some playthroughs where it hardly switches over the fire damage. But overall, they still rank among the best fights in this boss rush due to its unique mechanic. I'll be placing Mercenary Matter in S tier. Nemesis Mark II Mimicry is the other boss you can roll on Wave 12. This one is not as good as Mercenary Matter. Matter of fact, it is a letdown due to their bugginess. It constantly changes forms in a similar fashion, but for whatever reason this boss was having a lot of trouble using some of its weapons like its minigun in the heavy form, and then you get to his final form taking on a conch soldier, but it doesn't really function correctly. I made sure to check on this fight every now and again during the event, however frustrating it was trying to roll a 50-50 on this boss, but it just doesn't seem to work properly at the time of recording. So I am gonna have to put Mimicry into D tier. Wave 13 has us against one of the 4 mini-boss gauntlets to roll for. The first one features the Mechanical Brothers, Larry, and Private Manpower. The Mechanical Brothers are an engineer duo, both of them firing penetrating rescue ranger bolts with high damage. It's a very simple encounter with not a lot to it, and even though we are now seeing more mini-bosses being paired up together, it is a very easy fight. I'll be placing the brothers in C tier. Larry is a unique Troller boss, and they sport a creative and unique moveset to complement the subclass, including being able to make short blast jumps and market guard you. They're the only mini-boss that comes with giant support, those being a gauntlet heavy named Bitch Haver and a burst fire soldier named Ho Harvester. Very interesting way of shitposting at the later end of the boss rush. The boundaries of the arena does get lowered when they spawn in, so just like in the original mission, you could lure Larry down into the water pits for an insta-kill. Overall, they're a very fun and uniquely designed mini-boss. Larry's gonna go up in A tier. Private Manpower is a heavy that swaps between a few weapons, while being boosted by manpower ups. They're a fairly interesting boss that does come with unique conch punchy supports, but they are easier to handle compared to Larry. They didn't put up too much of a fight despite having the boosted power, but they still serve as a decent way of ending this gauntlet. Private Manpower is going to B tier. The second gauntlet features 2 mini-bosses and are fought separately. Colonel Crackle is a soldier that starts shooting short-circuit balls before flying up and hovering to rain down a barrage of rockets, while Captain Carfarnum is a lock-and-load demo shooting in quick bursts, but also gets to use a sticky jumper that launches players up into the sky. There's a few problems I have with this whole gauntlet. For one, it's the second to shortest gauntlet this wave, and these bosses simply don't do enough on their own. They have very distinctive weapons, and it would be interesting to see them together as a duo. Perhaps some more health and damage output could be needed here, but right now they're among the most underwhelming bosses this wave. Colonel Crackle is going to be in C tier, but Captain Confarnum will be in D tier. The third gauntlet features a couple mini-bosses designated as war machines, and they have a bunch of letters and numbers in their names, so I'll just refer to them by their classes. The engineer uses a burst fire rescue ranger and can deploy a few sentries as soon as it spawns, while the cyber machine just stands on a perch and starts sniping people. They do suffer from the same problem as Deadlock, where you barely see them take shots at all, and any shot they take is rather pitiful. But it's even worse here since they stay up at spawn where Spy and possibly Pyro can't reach up to attack effectively. The engineer is a decent mini-boss, but its sentries are too easy to counter, so they will be placed in C tier, and the sniper is going to be placed in D tier. The next two are the Pyro Machine, which is a combo pyro with a degreaser and flare gun, while the Heavy Machine is also a sort of combo punchy, where you crit boosts on kill with his KGB to unleash a barrage of rockets from his shotgun for a while. These two are definitely one of the other cooler duos in this boss rush, but besides that, they are pretty much serviceable, but are a step above the machines prior. The Pyro Machine is going to be placed in C tier, but the Heavy Machine is going to be placed slightly above in B tier. Then finally, the fourth gauntlet just has one mini-boss, and it's Overclock Dave. He's basically a Captain Punch with a few unique abilities, one of which he ground pounds to unleash a wave of circling shield similar to Major Shocks, but dare I say this is a disappointing fight. It is the shortest gauntlet in this bracket, and despite their health and the amount of supports, he still is easy to kill. Sure, he has plenty of flashy moves, and is the only one in this wave to have a unique death animation, but they pretty much play like an advanced level boss. If he didn't have his own slot and instead was lumped with Colonel Crackle and Captain Confarnum, or maybe move his boss fight down a couple of waves, then he would have been a decent addition. With his current placement right now, he is very underwhelming. I'll be placing Overclock Dave in D tier. Wave 14, as well as the rest of the waves moving forward, are going to feature bosses fought in one single arena. Captain Punch, the 1528th, and Major Catastrophe are both featured as super juiced versions of their Valve counterparts, sporting a few ability-based attacks and an arsenal of weapons to use. Captain Punch gets to shoot out varieties of gauntlets that behave a lot differently and are color-coded so you know what to expect. Same with Catastrophe with his multiple launchers, including a sticky nuke, which is a much more lethal and indestructible version. Quite an awesome evolution on their boss designs, but the fight is the most challenging to get through. These two are basically the only static boss fight in the entire boss rush, standing at opposite sides of each other just to compensate for their insanely high damage output. The layout is also a lot more tighter to move around in due to the rocks and boulders cluttering the arena. There's also the unique common supports, which are these little steel gauntlets and caber demos, and both of them can resist range damage and can overcrowd the arena. Sometimes it gets to the point where camping on the rocks is encouraged. Overall, I still had some enjoyment with this fight, but there is a bit of tedium with what's going on around them. I'll be placing these two together in B tier. Next on Wave 15, we have Barry, Larry, and Harry as a Trojan trio. Yeah, as if one wasn't annoying enough. Jokes aside, this is among the better fights in this boss rush due to its standout nature. It's 3 bosses fought simultaneously, which fits right in the expert bracket, and each of these guys have their own unique moveset. Barry, the googly-eyed one, is able to launch a player upwards and possibly crater them with their spoon. Harry, the one with the cowboy hat, has a rocket jumper that stuns on hit, and is able to rain down spoons up in the air. And Larry, the one without any cosmetic, returns as a stronger variant that can also do the big shoe attack. But the coolest thing about this trio is that they can perform co-op actions. Either one is sent upwards to rain down spoons from above, or double up on a big shoe attack to stomp and create shockwaves across the arena. And then when one of the trio dies, the remaining 2 gets to crash out and have some weird fire AoE around them. All this to say that this Trojan trio is epic. It's very fun and very cool, like I always say with unique bosses like them. The only critiques I have is that their co-op actions could have been performed on the spot rather than having at set locations, because it does make them easy targets when one struggles to path towards it. There's also the Shovel Soldiers too, which periodically spawns, but I think they would have been a lot more cooler if they were called in as a support ability or something. But regardless, this is a cool and amazing trio to fight against, and all their attacks are super creative. I'm putting the Trojan trio into the S tier. Wave 16 features Overclock Dave Reborn, and my oh my, this is such a huge glow up. The fight starts by him suplexing to the side, which he has negative aura, but beyond that, everything about this boss goes super hard. He's now a heavy boss that uses a variety of ranged weapons, but they're still pretty lethal up close with a few melees to swap between. And he has a couple of unique abilities like slamming the ground multiple times, a slow ground pound attack where he creates shockwaves as well as multiple sticky bombs. There's also a multi-boulder attack before slowly winding up to throw out a massive volley of grenades, and then he also gets a brand new ability unique to this boss rush, where he rides a bumper car to do 2 boost attacks before flying up into the air and coming down with his shotgun and several other bumper cars that explode in the large radius. It's awesome, and it doesn't even stop there. He sends in a combat tank at half health, sporting a homing rocket launcher and railgun, and it patrols around the map. And then he goes into panic mode near the end where he's all desperate and unlocks one ability where he nukes people in a large radius. Then you beat him and get to witness one of the best death sequences in the boss rush. The particle effect slowly glowing bright and seeing Dave all battered on his knees and slowly about to explode. It is such a beautiful and satisfying ending to a wonderfully done boss fight. The only nitpicks I will point out is where before they start doing the bumper car attack, they pull out a shotgun that in most of my playthroughs always clips someone. And then when he's in this battered form, sometimes his other attacks put him back in his undead form. The supports he brings in can be a little annoying, especially the armored bat scouts where they're super tanky and you have to deal with 3 at most. But besides all that, this is my personal favorite boss in this mission. He's cool and awesome, his theme absolutely rocks, and easily stands above most bosses in this mission so far. I'll be putting Dave Reborn in S tier. Wave 17 features the Lone Swordsman, the Redemonite boss with a unique entrance, chancing from the opposite side of the arena and cannonballs while vertically spinning its sword. It's a super cool ability that gets used from time to time, and it also has a bunch of other cool abilities besides the usual Demonite attacks, such as being able to cast several swords from the ground, growing its skull cutter in size to unleash a devastating slam, and it does unlock 2 more abilities at half health, one of which is where it channels several damaging beams that spin around themselves for duration, and the other is channeling several portals from the sky where they charge down a swing and teleport many times. These are super creative abilities that fit really well with the Demonite boss, without a doubt. But with their placement as the second to last fight in the boss rush, I can't help but feel that this fight is a little weak. It's a melee-centric boss with 0 support, which goes right with the theme of what this guy is, but bosses like these are easily countered with slowdown effects like Jars, Sappers, and Rocket Specialist, especially as one that relies a lot on charging around. It isn't too bad considering he has a couple of ranged abilities that always clap somebody, but there are still many times where you're effectively shooting a punching bag. And one ability I haven't mentioned yet is an attack that shoots out a horizontal row of pumps and lasers. This one is not only an extremely easy one to dodge, but it doesn't really work well with the hills of the map because there's plenty of elevation. So much so that at certain positions you can just like duck under them. I still like this boss at the end of the day, but there are some flaws with him that makes me think that maybe they could have been better off being encountered earlier in the boss rush. I'll be placing the Lone Swordsman in B tier. Finally, at the end of the boss rush comes the penultimate fight. Major Shocks from Temu returns as Fallen Shocks, and their introduction is such a sight to behold. You're in this, Final Destination-ass arena, they explode out of their rock and transform into a Titan. Then their title card flashes with their name in red. It's great. This fight is all about movement and finesse, but it is tipped in your favor by having your speed boosted to the maximum. Most of Fallen Shock's attacks create large damaging zones, some of it coming from a few of the projectiles he shoots out, but there are also a few other unique abilities unique to this boss, all thanks to the custom animations they have that make them look absolutely sick as hell. He does have an alternate ground slam attack, where the whole arena glows and they slowly charge up the attack either one time or 3 times consecutively. There's also one where he spins around like a ballerina and pulls everyone into it to try and insta-kill them. Although surprisingly, this one move when combined with other attacks has the potency to almost crash the server. And then finally, the biggest highlight is where he crouches down to charge up its mega laser, and when it fires off, the recoil is so intense it pushes them far back. And eventually he can do an alternate version where he teleports around the arena to do it 4 times. For being the final boss of this mission, the fight isn't really that difficult. I mean, you just get your speed boosted for free as I mentioned before. Realistically, the only times you die is from its very few insta-kills, the mega laser possibly being flick-shotted due to the AI targeting, or just failing to avoid the shockwaves and ground slams. But that much is acceptable when all other bosses are like this. The most important aspect of a boss fight is how fun it is to play it, and Fallen Shocks nails this by having many of its abilities and attacks being high damage but easily telegraphed and encouraging you to move and jump around a lot, all taught by the vast array of bosses you fought up to this point, and it really does pay off. This final boss fight is simply peak, and they have a very satisfying ending sequence to cap off this boss rush. I'll be putting Fallen Shocks in S tier. So then concludes the entire tier list of Deja Mort. It was a very interesting proof of concept. The idea of a boss rush mission like this likely would have never taken off with a small and simple game mode like MvM, but it's all thanks to the many talented creators in the space that were able to have very engaging and interesting boss designs that are on par with other games. If you are interested in playing the boss rush yourself, you have until May 25th to play on the event servers, but there's a good chance that it will be archived at a later date. I have some more thoughts I'd like to share about this mission in general, but I am gonna save it for when I review Means vs Machines Repealed as a whole in the near future. So if you want to look forward to that, then you can subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like it as well, so you can tell other mission makers that you want more bosses like these.